Well, guys, you found it. The very best marinara and meatballs recipe you're going to find. Wait till you try this one. Well, howdy folks, and welcome back to Texas Cooking Today. On this episode, we're going to be making spaghetti and meatballs. Now, I decided to do a spaghetti and meatball show because, well, this dish is really popular in the United States. And I wanted to show a really good quality, easy to make spaghetti and meatballs that folks could do at home. Now, I know there's a lot of folks that want to learn how to make this, but they don't know how much of which herbs to use or which spices or any of that. And that's what we're going to open up today. I'm going to show you everything that you're going to need to know about making a basic marinara, but a very good one. This is going to be a marinara sauce based upon a recipe that I was taught when I was a boy. Now, when I was a kid, one of my cousins had married a gentleman, an Italian gentleman from New York. He was a member of a family that owned a chain of Italian restaurants there, and they had done very well in New York. I believe also in Chicago. Anyway, they taught me the fundamentals and the basics of making a really good marinara. And I'm talking about starting with the fresh tomatoes and the Italian sausage and the whole bit. I mean, we went into great detail on it. And so I learned a lot from this guy. And when I was a kid, I was really focused on cooking a lot. I was very interested in it, so my mind was quite open to that. And from this individual, I learned a great deal about Italian influences and flavors and things like that. And so what I want to do is to show you a recipe that I developed from what I learned from him. And this recipe is based upon ingredients that are commonly found in most people's pantry. So guys, this is an inexpensive dish, but it's delicious. I want to teach you how to make meatballs that are herbed and flavored just the right way. And I'm going to show you just the right way to cook them too. It's a lot easier than you think. So I'll tell you what, let's get in the kitchen and let's get busy making us some spaghetti and meatballs. Come on. Oh yeah, there we go. That looks great. Now guys, we have our ingredients right back here, and I'm about to show you how to make this really cool marinara. This is something that I came up with so long ago because of what I was taught from other family members. And the story on that's really neat. The background's so cool there, but I learned so much from them. And from them, I learned how to produce a wonderful marinara that could be done in the home on any given night from ingredients that are commonly kept in one's pantry. All right, so this is a great recipe that's wonderful, low cost, easy to make, and we're going to get into the whole of it. So guys, come over this way and let's look at these ingredients, and then I'm going to get on with making some of the best tasting spaghetti and meatballs that you're ever going to have the pleasure of enjoying. Come on over. Now guys, a marinara sauce starts with the tomato product. No, I'm not using fresh tomato product. I told you that I wanted to do this with stuff that people normally keep in their pantry. This is tomato paste, and I have 12 ounces of it right here. 12 ounces of tomato paste. Now I'm going to have to hydrate this, and so I'm going to be using water. You can also, if you like cooking with wine or you like putting wine in a marinara, you can add wine to this dish. I won't be on this one, but you can add in a cup to a cup and a half of red wine of your choice, whatever tastes good to you, or whatever you're having with the meal. If you put it in this, the meal will pair to that wine. So enjoy that. Now, back here on our herbs to flavor this, and let me start before we get to the herbs. There's going to be a couple of spices, a little salt, a little bit of garlic. I'm going to go about a tablespoon, maybe slightly more on that garlic. That'll be about 4 cloves minced. Rosemary, I'm going to need a couple of teaspoons on that. 2 teaspoons rosemary, 2 teaspoons of thyme, 2 teaspoons of oregano, and 3 to 4 tablespoons of basil. Okay, now that basil, that's really neat. It's a wonderful flavor. It just brings out the sweet herby flavor that's fantastic when it comes to a quality marinara. Be careful with that oregano, it overwhelms the flavor on a dish. And so can thyme and rosemary. They can be rather potent in a dish, but when they're in the right proportions, they're delicious. We're also going to be using all of these items in the meatballs in addition to some cheese. And I have a half a cup of grated Parmesan cheese. You can either use the fresh grated like I'm doing here, and just kind of let it sit out and dry for a little while. You can break it down into smaller pieces if you want. That works wonders as a binder in our meatballs, and it adds so much flavor and dimension to them. The dry stuff works a little better as a binder in your meatballs. And if you'll notice, I don't have anything out here in the way of flour or breadcrumbs or anything like that for your meatballs, because frankly, you're just not going to need it, guys. I have a little olive oil there, and that'll help cook up some of the garlic. Now over this way, of course, if you're going to make meatballs, you're going to have meat, right? And so what I have here is a couple of pounds of chuck. You can use whatever you want. Now, I'm not using all of this, all right? I'm going to be grinding all of it, but I'm going to be using about 1 pound to about 1.25 pounds of this to make my meatballs with. And then the rest I'm going to be using for other projects. However, what cut do you use? Well, that's up to you. I'm using the chuck because of the depth of flavor that it has. It's really neat when it comes to meatballs. However, it's really fatty. So if you buy it pre-ground, it might be too fatty for this. Look for some sirloin or something. That works well also if you're going to have it pre-ground. Or just have your butcher clean up some chuck for you and grind that off. Because what I'm looking for is that intermuscular fat like this has. Let me show this to you. You see the banding up here. That's called intermuscular fat. And that's the stuff that actually makes really, really, really tender meat. And even if you're grinding it, you want good quality grind so it's super tender, so those meatballs just are velvety and soft. And that's why I do it this way. Also, if you've ever gotten a package of ground meat at the store and it looked pretty and red, and then you broke it open and it was all brown in the middle, well guys, that's the reason right there that I don't trust grocery stores anymore. Because what they'll do is they'll take something that's out of date, that's turned brown, they'll roll it in some meat juices and repackage it with a new Best By date, and then suddenly you're off buying it and you've got meat that's red on the outside, brown in the middle. That's how they got that way, guys. So just return it to the store, say you guys cheated me, and be careful about buying your meat there. This way, you grind your own, you know what's in it, there's no problems. So there we have it, some beautiful chuck. Now, if you're wondering what's behind that over there, well, that's a beer bread. And, well, if you want that recipe, guys, you're just going to have to watch a different show, aren't you? Let's get on with making this fabulous tasting sauce and meatballs. Let's start with our meat. Anybody who's ever watched my shows knows I like to grind my own meat, and for very good reasons. Now, I use a grinder attachment that's attached to the front of my stand mixer. They work great. The little grinders that you buy that grind by themselves, that are electric, those are fantastic and they're not expensive. Also, they make the hand crank type that attach to just the end of a cutting board. And guys, any of them works really good. Don't be afraid. Those on that clamp on are $12 to $20. The electric ones are about $20 to $50. This one is a little higher than that, you know, the ones that go in your stand mixers. However, really practical for those of us that have a stand mixer. Now, first thing I'm going to do is I'm just going to work into my meat and get some of the heavier fat out of this, because I've got some huge globs right off in here. Your cut of chuck will often, like this, if you're using chuck, is going to have multiple different muscles, and sometimes you can just put your hand in there and pull them apart a little bit like this, and it kind of shows them off. But that's what we're doing, is we're just separating those muscles, getting rid of some of the fat between them. So now, I don't have to have all of this in there. I don't really need it all in there. So Some of my fat I do want, so I'm not going to fight against it too much. That huge glob of fat. That's one of the reasons that ground chuck is such a fatty cut, is they take all of that and just process it right on in, and they don't do what I'm doing here, which is leaning it up a little bit. Another advantage to doing your own grinding, right there, guys, you don't have to rely on what somebody else's perception of your food should be. You can make it yours, so you can have leaner chuck if you go working things out a bit like that. Not a problem. Now this big piece, there's some silver skin here. When it comes to grinding, the silver skin doesn't matter so much. But dude, if I don't want it in most of the things I cook, if there's a huge chunk of it, I'm taking it out. All right, all I have to do when I'm grinding, so you'll know, you need to fix your meat so it'll fit down into your grinder, all right? So I'm just going to cut simple little strips that'll drop right down in there. Remember when cutting, keep those fingers curved under like this so you don't cut the tips of your fingers. Pinch your blade. Good handling techniques. Very important, guys. All right, my meat is ready to put in my grinder. If you're thinking that's too much work, think about it. It's not a lot of work, and I was able to remove a huge amount of what I didn't want in my meat. Also, I've had a chance to look inside the meat. I know it's fresh. I don't have to worry about what I'm getting. I certainly don't have to return anything to the store. Now on to the next business. When it comes to these grinders, I've got to forewarn you right here and now. This is the truth of it. These things spit. Never face the business end of that. Never. Because they spit. They spit meat. They spit juices. They spit. And if you see it spit this time, don't be surprised. It's a pretty common thing. I'm going to tighten my collar here to make sure I got a good bite and it doesn't flow out around those edges. Don't over tighten it because it's hard for the machine to turn it at that point. I'll take several pieces of my meat, put them up in my tray, and then just start working them through. There we go. As you see, it goes really pretty quick once it starts going. Okay, we're done. That's all there is to it, folks. It's just that easy to grind your own meat. And what I get here, is this far, far superior, much more subtle, much more sticky, willing to bind to itself product. So I don't have to use binder in my meat like, people use egg and they use flour and they use breadcrumbs and all manner of different things. You don't have to have that when you've got good quality grind. Okay? There it is. I never have to worry about my grind. Next thing, we're going to get this into a bowl, and that way we can get our seasonings into it and mix everything together to make our meatballs, and we'll be off cooking. And as I said, I really didn't need all of this, but I need enough to get myself about 4 to 6 good meatballs. So there we go, slightly over half of it. I'm ready to go. About a pound and a quarter. Okay guys, I wanted to get real good close-up shots of the next of this. Our garlic. To open this up, like I said, I want to do about 4 cloves. If you notice, I pushed in with my thumb on top. It's the best way I know of getting into one of these. Now, to get this papery husk off of the outside of your garlic, I'm going to teach you a wonderful method that I developed a long time ago when I was a kid, and I've been using it ever since. It works like a charm. Simply take each clove, and without twisting hard enough to break the meat on the inside, just gently back and forth like this, twist. You heard the cracking. Let's take this off. Boom. There it is. Let's do it again. Boom. There it is. Our garlic has been dehusked without any real work. Nice thing about this is I get a whole clove that I can process later on if I want, and just makes life so much easier. I don't have a mess on my hands or anything else. All right guys, let's get on with processing this. And the first thing that we need to do before I do anything else, I'm going to show you something. Anytime you're going to cut, when you're going to hold whatever food it is, even something tiny like this, you need to have this hand in the right position, okay? And if your fingers are out like this, you're just begging to get cuts. And if you've been getting cuts in your life and you hold food like this, that's why. So instead of this, why don't we do this? I turn my fingers under. Isn't that weird? Okay, but it works. I tell you what, now I'm going to take my knife, which can smack right against that knuckle and doesn't hurt nothing, because it's just the side of my knife, and I can gently take the callus off the end of each one of these. Okay, so there's the first technique I've taught you, which is curling those fingers under. Very smart thing to do when handling a knife, all right? And that's just sort of the learning, the early learning techniques is the best way of doing it. Next thing you want to know, most of the time I tell people you pinch the knife here, wrap these fingers around so you get a proper grip on that sucker. But this time we're actually, instead of choking up, we're going to be pulling back to the very back part of the blade like this. And I'm going to be making an up and down rocking motion. That up and down rocking motion will be the knife doing this. Okay? Now this hand over here is actually going to be on the top of the knife. My thumb is going to be turned under, just like that. Fingers on that bullnose edge at the end of the knife. And what that does is it keeps the knife from rocking this way or this way, because my fingers are up there to control it. It provides downward pressure. So this hand, all it has to do is just go up and down with it. Just like that. And that's all there is to it, guys. That's the motion for mincing garlic right there. Isn't that easy? First thing we do is crush our garlic to keep it from bobbing all around on us. So just give it a push, and you don't have to just absolutely destroy it, guys. All you got to do is keep it from rolling around on you as you're cutting it. That's why I do that. No other reason. Keeps it in place, kind of keeps it steady. Now, first thing I want to do is I'm just reducing the pieces. Because that mincing motion I showed you, you need to have everything to where it'll fit underneath the blade as you're cruising it across up and down like that. Okay. See how it's kicking pieces out? That's okay, get that back in there. Couple more of those big ones and we're ready to go at it. You see how simple this is? Even if you took your time and just went slow, it's not going to take you long to mince up garlic like this. And what I'm about to show you, this technique, simply takes practice, nothing more. Lots and lots and lots and lots and lots and lots and lots of practice. Okay, here we go. Lost a piece. Uh-oh. If that happens, don't lose sleep over it, for goodness sake. Now watch, see how I'm pushing that garlic off of my blade? Not this way, which is dangerous. This way, we're pushing it off. There's another way of removing it. I'll show you that in a moment. Like this. Boom. Boom. Sometimes it sticks. There we go. Now I find it handy sometimes to angle my blade outward, and I find it gives me a good cut for this. So I've slowed that down for you. That's what I normally do. That garlic is ready to go now. All I have to do is get it down in my dish and we are up and cooking. All right, guys, it's time to get on with putting our spices and herbs down in our meat. And it's pretty much the mimic of the sauce, all right? So I want a little bit of salt down in here, and I'm gonna start with, about a half a teaspoon, half to 3/4 of a teaspoon, and that's all it's really gonna need. The thyme. I don't need a whole lot of thyme on this, okay? So I'm using 1 teaspoon. Remember, that's 1 teaspoon to about a pound, pound and a quarter of meat. On the oregano, again, oregano is potent, so all I really need here is 1 teaspoon. And if you doubt my measurements on this, trust me. For many years, I practiced putting things in measuring spoons, and then I'd put it in my hand to look at it. And so that way I would know exactly what that item looks like measured in my hand, and I would know if I'm getting the right measurement or not. And after teaching myself that, I occasionally confirm it. And yeah, I'm dead on those measurements. What I want to do here, this rosemary, often rosemary, and you see my gloved hand, that's so I can mix the meat in a minute, guys. You'll see what I'm talking about. Rosemary is twiggy and it's dry. Again, 1 teaspoon on that. Okay. So what I need to do is to process that twigginess out, because if I just throw it down in there, that's not going to soften, and people are going to be biting down on what seems like little twigs in your food, and they will not like you for it. Okay, so see, this doesn't take very long, guys. It's there. See how I've rubbed it? I now have rubbed rosemary the same way I put rubbed thyme in there. Now I've got rubbed rosemary in it, 1 teaspoon. Remember, rosemary is wickedly potent and it's going to hit you hard. 2 teaspoons. 1 of the basil. Whoops, that's more than a teaspoon. That was a teaspoon and a half. See what I mean? I can spot it. Boom, teaspoon. On my garlic, that was those 4 cloves. I'm going to put about half or a little less right down in here. There we go. The cheese was for the meatballs, remember? All of the cheese goes in there. There. That's everything for flavoring your meatballs. No egg is necessary, no bread products, none of that hooey, okay? It's just not necessary. And understand, like I said, it was the Italian family that a relative of mine married into that taught me these important little lessons. Certain things like that just aren't necessary. You can use them, but you don't have to. And in this case, I'm going to have the most fabulous little meatballs. You see what I've done here? All I've done is just sit and mix all that together, just like you would knead a dough. Do it the same way. That way you get good, even distribution of your ingredients. And you can see it. When you've got even distribution, it looks like it. And that's what we got right there. Even distribution. I'm done. This is ready to be rolled into meatballs. But guess what? I'm not going to mess with that until the sauce is starting to get hot. Okay, the next thing you need to know, meatballs, do you pre-cook them or do you not? Either way. Okay, if you pre-cook them, guys, you get the flavor of the fond that develops on the outside of that meatball as well as in the pan. But if you don't necessarily want the flavor of that fond in your marinara, or which is where it's going to be once you put the meatballs in there, then don't do it that way. You can put meatballs prepared just like I've done them here directly into the sauce and bring it up in temperature and cook it off, and these will cook down just fine. The sauce will be delicious, the meatballs will be delicious, and we're going to enjoy it a whole lot. Okay guys, it's time to get on to making that marinara. Okay, again, that 12 ounces tomato paste. Get it right down in there. Okay, right down in this, the first thing I need to do before I start with any of these spices and herbs and all of that is I've got to get this paste hydrated to a level that I can work with. So guys, let's look down in here just a little bit closer. Okay, now in order to get my paste thinned, don't put all of your water in there at once, guys. Just put a little bit. I've started with 4 cups. The reason I didn't tell you how much water it's going to take to make this happen, well, that's impossible. It depends on the brand of tomato paste you use, on how concentrated it is. Okay, some are more concentrate than others, and they're going to take, of course, more water. They will end up making a larger batch, you better believe it. So, if you will use your typical canned tomato paste, and I know it sounds nasty, you might be thinking, well, why isn't he cooking with fresh? Okay, here's the real truth, guys. Tomatoes, when they're picked in the field, the ones that go to the grocery store are picked green from the plant. Okay? The ones that are red, that were vine ripened on the plant, go directly to canning because they won't make it to the grocery stores without spoiling. Okay, they'll spoil within a day or two. So they go straight to canning. And they get turned into this stuff. So this is actually the only, except for going to farmers markets in season, this is the only way that you're going to get truly vine ripened tomato. Now, I know there's some people out there that are saying, hold it, Chef Trotter, we can correct you on that. I buy vine ripened tomatoes at the grocery store. Well, guess what? Okay, I've grown tomatoes. I farmed tomatoes. I know about tomatoes. So here's the real truth. That little snippet of vine that you get in the grocery store that has tomatoes on it, guys, that is not actually vine ripened tomatoes. It's an industry ploy. Essentially, they're lying to you. They're lying to you about the tomato product that you're getting, plain and simple. And it's disgusting, it's nasty, and it is taking advantage of ignorance in people. Not stupidity, ignorance. There's a lot of folks that just don't know how the tomato industry works. Okay, now that's about the consistency I would normally see from a typical tomato sauce, maybe just a hair thinner, and that's okay. So far I've used almost 3 cups, about 2.5 cups so far. And I might add more water in a little while. As this starts to simmer down a little bit, not a problem. We'll add a little more water at that point and adjust our consistency in the sauce. But right now I have a simple, pure, beautiful tomato sauce that's the exact consistency that I want. I'm not relying on anybody else's measurements. Now I want some salt in there, and on this, 1/2 to 3/4 teaspoon, just like that. More than enough. Now we're going to go and do our rosemary and get the rest of these ingredients in there. If you remember, as I mentioned earlier, with our meat, rosemary is twiggy. Brittle and twiggy and not very pleasant in your food. People that put, now when I'm measuring this, I'm measuring the twigs, okay? So that 1 teaspoon, not rubbed, but 1 teaspoon of the twig version of the rosemary, the whole leaf is what they call that. Because those are what those really are. Those are the leaves of the rosemary, but you know, it's a thorny, it's like an evergreen basically. And when those little leaves are dried, they get hard and they're sharp and pointy and not pleasant. That's another teaspoon. So you want them measured in that way, not after they are rubbed. So what was that? Less than a minute, and I've got a nice powdered product there. Right down in that pot. Okay. Our time, same thing. 1. That's 3/4. Come on. 2 teaspoons. Practice that little technique, guys, and you won't be breaking out your measuring spoons every time that you have to measure something off. It's much more convenient. So let me show you what I'm talking about when it comes to measured items in your hand, what they look like. We'll pull out a rough teaspoon. Okay, rough teaspoon oregano. Boom. What have you been seeing me measure out, guys? Does it look exactly like that? Boom, huh? 1 teaspoon. Isn't that easy? 2. I know it's hard to fathom, isn't it? But believe it or not, you'll actually get there. Okay, this one is that old tablespoon measure, that guy right there. So what did I say? With 3 tablespoons? Tablespoon. Boom. The rest of our garlic right there. Wham. All right. All of our spices are down in that pot. All of our herbs down in the pot. And we're ready to go with this. Delicious. Now, the next thing, we need to bring that up in temperature and enjoy it. Now, also I'll be adding just a little bit of olive oil. It really seems to do the trick. And a couple of things you can do with that olive oil also, if you like, you can pre-cook the garlic. And it tastes really good that way, where you just gently toast it in the olive oil and then pour it down into this, and it's a really neat flavor, but not necessary. And like I said, I'm just going to show you a quickie sauce. I normally don't do that on my quickie. All right, guys, I'm going to put some flame underneath this. We'll bring it up in temperature, and I'm going to start working out my meatballs right now and put down into this. Guys, it's time to get those meatballs made. At this point, it's your choice. Do you want big meatballs? Do you want little bitty meatballs? See, you get to make your meatballs however you want. Now me, I like a meatball that is, about the diameter. I don't know if you know what this diameter is, but if you've ever seen a racquetball or a handball, somewhere in between those two. Way smaller than a tennis ball, not that big. Not as little as a ping pong ball. You can do them like that. Right down in my pot. Nothing more than that. Just tear off some of that meat, pressing it. The way I work out any air pockets, get it pressed together real well. Got that cheese, some of it inside, some of it on the outside. It's all going to be releasing flavor as it's cooking in the sauce. Now if you have binding problems, what you just saw me do, let me show you here. I push it down and I spiral it like this. And what that does is it causes those meat fibers to kind of twist and align with each other, so that when you pull it back up into a ball, it likes to hold its shape, okay? If you're having problems with your meat holding shape, give that a try, guys. You might be surprised. So I've got 6 big, beautiful meatballs down in my sauce. I can't wait. This is going to be so delicious. There it is, guys, our meatballs down in that sauce. Beautiful, beautiful looking setup, isn't it? And what's going to happen is that's all going to come up in temperature together. Those meatballs and sauce are going to be cooking together. They're going to marry their flavors to one another. And in a little bit, you're going to have the best meatballs and marinara you've ever put in your mouth. And it was so easy to do at home, guys, without really having to spend a lot of money. Inexpensive and delicious. Now, guys, we have this on a low heat. Let it simmer at a very low temperature. See, it's just now starting to come up. And once it's fully simmering all the way through and you got steam coming off of it real nice, you want to start your timing right about then. That should take about an hour to cook. You might cook it an hour to an hour and 30 minutes if you're not real sure on those meatballs, or depending on how big they are. And that way the meatball gets cooked all the way through, and the marriage of flavors. We are now 30 minutes in on this cook. As you can see, meatballs cooking up beautifully. You don't have to have all that binder in them for them to hold their shape. You see that, guys? They held up just fine. Isn't that neat? And we have this beautiful, beautiful marinara going on here. Oh, the flavor is divine. I've already tasted it, and don't forget to taste yours. And I'm going to give that plenty of time to cook, guys. I'm in no rush on mine. And here's a little trick. If you want to thicken that sauce, cock the lid just a little bit, and that will allow it to steam off a bit quicker. The sauce will thicken up quicker, and it'll be just to the texture of your liking. Okay, guys, we are heating some water for the spaghetti itself. This has been simmering now for about an hour and a half. Yes, I went for the long simmer. If you'll notice, see the darker oils around the outside. Two things that you've got there. One of those is some of the saturated fat from that meat, and the other is some of the oils from the tomato. So what I'm doing, if you notice, I put a paper towel in there, and that paper towel isn't soaking up the sauce, it's soaking up that fat, guys. That's what it's doing. And you can do this neat little trick. It'll sit there and soak up all of that fat, and all you have to do is just do it one little bit at a time. So I'll be able to remove all of that using this very simple method. You can also put a spoon in there and just let the oil cascade over the side of that spoon. All right, guys, there it is. Spaghetti and meatballs. Now, It's an old favorite. It's a goodie. Everybody likes spaghetti and meatballs. It's so good. First, let's slice open one of these meatballs. Let me get a knife. Okay, first thing I want to show you. Look inside of this. Looks slightly pinkish. All right, guys, that doesn't mean it's undercooked. That was cooked for an hour and a half. Trust me, it's cooked all the way through. That slightly pinkish hue comes because of the effect of cooking raw meat in something that has preservatives in it. Now, that vitamin C, that ascorbic acid, acts like a preservative to that meat, so you get a slight pinkish. I'm going to tell you the truth. I could have cooked it for 3 hours, 4 hours, the same color, right? Exactly. Get a little of this sauce, a little spaghetti. That's right. I was taught how to twirl it right up on my fork. Nothing like spaghetti. Oh, man. The flavor of that sauce. Oh, God. I don't get to have this very often, guys. Pardon me, that was my bread timer. Got more than one thing going on here. The herbs, slight hint of garlic. That cheese just makes it rich and pulls it all together and binds it. It's really cool how it works. Wait till you try it. Guys, I would like to say thank you very, very much for watching Texas Cooking Today. To my subscribers, dudes, extra special thank you to you. If you haven't subscribed, why not? Why not? I've got great recipes coming out all the time. It's going to be a regular thing. I usually hit on Thursdays, okay? So look for me, guys. Subscribe, click the bell. I'm going to let you know when the new stuff comes out. You're going to like what's coming up. It's really good recipes. Thank you again for this show, and please click like. One last thing, guys, if you would. Please just have a good day. Bye-bye.